Oh, and I have worked in the field of bariatric medicine for about 18 years. It's getting to be a while, my friends. And I am happy and grateful to be working with so many amazing people just like you. So, this week, and actually for the next several weeks, I'm going to be talking about what I call the four ACES, which is just an acronym. It's ACES, ACES, but there are four words that start with A. That's why it's called four ACES. People get confused with it, but to me, it made perfect sense. We're going to talk about these words of the four ACE acronym a week at a time. And tonight we're going to start with awareness, but I'm going to tell you what the four ACES stand for. So, again, there are four A words: awareness, acceptance, accountability, and attitude. The C in ACES stands for commitment, the E stands for effort, the S stands for self. And I use these seven words and call them the four ACES in so many regards when I try to teach about ways to overcome emotional eating or ways to stick with the healthy habits that help you lose weight and maintain weight. These four ACEs are critical, and you can apply these to any area of your life. And you'll understand that as we go through each one of these. But tonight we're going to focus on awareness. And I want to tell you a story that literally took place a couple of nights ago. I was talking to a group of people, and it was a fairly small group. I'd say about 30 people. And we were talking about emotional eating and how to stop engaging in this because it's a problem that a lot of people who have had weight loss surgery or have struggled with weight have really had a hard time stopping, how to stop engaging in emotional eating. So, like most of the other people in this group, this woman named Sandra, she was watching me and I could see the wheels turning. Like when you can tell when people are tracking with you. She was really processing the examples I was using. And some of those examples of emotional eating were things like you're at work and all of a sudden you find yourself face to face with the vending machine and you realize that the boss just said they were disappointed in the report you turned in. So immediately, your coping skill, your response, your reaction was to go get something to eat, emotional eating. Another example is you are driving through the drive through at the fast food joint that you like, and it's on your way home from the parent teacher conferences and you just learned that your kid's been cheating on exams. So again, when you put these pieces together, you become aware that maybe I went to the fast food place because I was all worked up after having learned that my child was cheating in school. Or another example, you find yourself sitting on the couch with a stash full of food because all of your friends had plans that night. Let's say it's a weekend night, and there you are in your apartment all by your lonesome self, and you're feeling lonely. So I took a pause to get a drink of water, and Sandra just shouts out in front of the whole group, "Oh, wow, I am an emotional eater. I had no idea." That's awareness. So a lot of times, awareness will come across as an aha moment. It's like, wow, who knew? Awareness is important. And here are the four main topics we're going to talk about tonight. That awareness is typically, maybe always, maybe usually, the first step of change. Secondly, awareness can open the door to new choices and therefore offer a greater possibility of actual change. We hear a couple of sayings that are kind of misused, and one of them is knowledge is power. The other is when we know better, we do better. So we're going to challenge those by looking at acceptance. And the fourth thing we're going to talk about is that awareness itself doesn't automatically produce changes in behavior. So those are the things we're going to cover tonight in this episode of Bariatric Care. So let's start with the first one. Awareness is the first step of change. And this seems kind of obvious, right? Like, how can I change something if I'm not even aware of it? And I'll give you an example of something that I learned about myself that I had no idea of about myself. I literally had no idea that I sounded like I was speaking through a megaphone in my daily life. Because in the house where I grew up, people were pretty darn loud. And a lot of times that loudness was an expression of anger. So in my young marriage, when I was all of 23 years old, my husband would sometimes just stop and look at me and he'd say, "Why do you have to say it like that?" And I'd be like what? Literally had no idea, lack of awareness of how my voice came across to other people. Now, this is a message I have gotten from lots of people over a lot of years. So, even all through my schooling to become a psychologist, it's like, Connie, be careful with your voice. You really can sound angry when you may or may not mean it, and you come across very intensely, which I know I do. So, becoming aware of that has led me to be more conscious about that and aware of how I speak and how I come across to others. So, when it comes to your world of eating and changing your eating, your exercise, your attitudes, how you approach situations, having an awareness is going to be really important because many of us engage in aspects of denial in our lives because we need to protect ourselves emotionally. So you may need to become aware of such things like, am I an emotional eater? Do I turn to food as a coping mechanism when I feel stressed or angry or lonely or sad or upset or worried or anything I don't find pleasant? Do I turn to food? Is it my coping mechanism? You can't really change that unless you become aware that that's what you do. Maybe you have a food addiction. A lot of people struggle with this concept, but maybe for you, it's one that makes perfect sense. And you're like, I know I have a food addiction, or I've become aware that I have a food addiction. Now, with my awareness, I can make a choice to change that, or I can make a choice to get the help I need for that. Here's something that you might want to consider. Do you have people in your life who enable you with food? Maybe this is something that if you become aware of, you can take some steps to change it. So, for example, some people have spouses who know that if you bring me X and X and X food, it makes me happy. But now, as a weight loss patient or somebody trying to maintain a healthier weight, I don't want you to bring me those foods. I know you do it because you're trying to make me happy, but really you're enabling me to fall back to old habits, and I don't need unhealthy enabling in my life. So maybe becoming aware of, gee, I didn't realize my husband enabled my food addiction, or I didn't understand that my husband enabled my sweet tooth, or maybe it's my mother, or maybe it's my children, or maybe it's the person at the office who doesn't seem to really like me that much, and they just are always bringing me treats. So, do you have enablers in your life? So, there are things that you need to look at and maybe become aware of. Are you aware of when you set yourself up for success or failure? Here's a way to check some of that. Just some examples. Do you keep junk food in your house? If you keep junk food in your house, maybe you have to go, wow, I'm really setting myself up for failure there. I wasn't aware of it or I hadn't thought of it in that way. What about setting boundaries with other people? Are you able to say, please don't bring that to my house, or I'm not able to go to a buffet with you? Are you able to set boundaries? And if you're not, maybe you're like, wow, I didn't realize I needed to develop some skills in this area. How about having the healthy communication skills that you need to maybe have a difficult conversation with somebody or to ask for what you need? I really need help in this area. I need to ask for it. Do you have trouble setting boundaries with yourself? If you're a parent or a grandparent or a teacher, you know that you set boundaries with kids, right? Hopefully, you have boundaries on electronics or boundaries for bedtime, things like that. And you adhere to that because you want to keep your children safe. Do you set boundaries for yourself with certain foods? because if you eat that, it might endanger what you're trying to do with healthy living. So maybe there are some things that you can become aware of that would assist you in your journey toward improved health and a better quality of life. So as we become aware of things like, I never thought about that. You've got to listen to things, listen to other podcasts, listen to people at your support group meetings, listen to other things that people are doing or saying about their lives. And maybe you can go, oh my gosh, I never thought of myself that way, but that fits for me too. So when we become aware of something, then it gives us the option to change it. So when I said at the beginning that awareness doesn't automatically lead to change, just because I know something doesn't mean I do it, right? We'll get to that in just a minute. But let's talk about how awareness can open the door to choice and the possibility of change. So once I know something about myself, or I become aware of something that I may be doing to harm somebody else, or maybe I become aware of how I'm setting myself up with food. And maybe I'm aware that, gosh, I can't trust myself to go into the grocery store because I always end up getting things at the checkout. What can I do about that? So once we become aware of something, then we have the opportunity to say, what could I do differently? So it's about learning better ways, giving myself options that maybe I didn't know I had before. So let's take the example of emotional eating. Let's say all of a sudden you're like, wow, I never thought of myself as an emotional eater before, but by golly, I really am an emotional eater. So now we have the awareness, okay? This is something that would probably be wise for me to look into changing because if I continue to engage in emotional eating, then I'm probably moving away from where I say I want to go in my life. Healthier life, better physical health, better emotional health, maintaining my weight loss, better quality of life, right? If I change and learn some different skills than emotional eating when I'm feeling stress or sadness or whatever it is I eat in response to, and learn some healthier skills, that will move me closer to where I say I want to be, closer to my goals. So by becoming aware of something that's moving me away from my goal, I can discover choices and options for moving closer to my goal. So you can discover what are the emotions that I tend to eat in response to. Maybe you're fine with feeling sad or lonely, but the minute you feel anger, boy, you're reaching for food. You have to learn where your triggers lie. Now, if you are typically an overall emotional eater, and this is for a lot of people, so many people, I'd say 85% of the people that I work with would define themselves as emotional eaters. Stated differently, that says I'm eating in response to emotions I find unpleasant. Eating is a coping skill for unpleasant emotion, coping skill. So if eating is my coping skill, I need new coping skills. I need healthier coping skills. Oh, so if I'm not going to be an emotional eater, I need to have other coping skills that aren't going to put weight back on me, that aren't going to be harmful to me in some other way, right? So then you say, okay, what am I feeling? What is it I'm needing? And how can I get that need met? I'm lonely. I need companionship. Oh, how can I get companionship? I can call a friend. I can go visit somebody. I can, reach out to somebody, write somebody a letter. I can turn on the TV. So, learning healthier coping skills to deal with the emotion is going to lead you further to your goal. The awareness alone isn't going to get you there, but the awareness gives you choices. And if you choose to engage in one of those other healthier coping skills, you'll come closer to your goals. Let's say that you become aware that your mom or your spouse or a coworker is a big enabler. They all say, I'm supporting you in your journey to health. I'm supporting you in your weight loss journey. I just want to be there for you. And then they show up with trigger foods. Their actions and their words aren't lining up, right? Their words say, I support you. Their actions say, I'm sabotaging you. So when you become aware of that, then you have choices of sitting them down and saying, please don't bring this to me. Or if that's like, oh my God, I could never tell my mother that, that would just crush her. Then take what she brings you, and when she leaves, flush it down the toilet, right? It gives you options. Awareness presents options. Then you get to choose to engage in healthier behaviors for your life. Let's do one more example. So, what if you become aware that you're setting yourself up for failure? Let's list the ways you do it. Oh, I go into the grocery store. Not an option. You don't have to go into the grocery store, right? We can order our groceries online. Oh, well, what if you become aware then you can't trust yourself to make a grocery list online because you sneak in those things that are not going to lead you where you want to be? So then maybe you enlist the help of somebody else. Here are the things I need in the grocery list. Would you please do the ordering? I don't trust myself. Gives you options. Maybe you become aware that you sabotage yourself by having foods that you say are for your children, but you're just making an excuse, right? So you come clean, you have the awareness, and you enlist the help of your family. Listen, y'all, I'm not asking you not to engage in treats now and then. What I am asking you is if we could keep this brand, and this brand out of the house. They are very strong triggers for me. You're welcome to have them at your ball games. You're welcome to have them if you're out, with, grandma and, you get that at the store once in a while. That's fine. Would you help me not sabotage myself by having these in the house? Right? So becoming aware of the ways in which you sabotage yourself gives you options for correcting that self sabotage. But then you got to follow through, right? So awareness helps you define, come up with options for healthier change. Beautiful. All right. So now we go to those two things that people say often that aren't necessarily true. One, knowledge is power, and when we know better, we do better. So let's start with knowledge is power. So now you have this knowledge, you have this awareness that you're sabotaging yourself, and you've come up with a really nice list of options. Just because you know this doesn't necessarily mean that that information is going to empower you to follow through, right? You need additional tools for that. Or maybe you become aware that you have insulin resistance, or you have um, polycystic ovarian syndrome, or whatever it is. Now you have this knowledge, or maybe you were diagnosed with diabetes. You have this knowledge and you've been instructed. You've had to take a class on here are healthy ways to manage your diabetes. You have the knowledge that you have the disease. You have the knowledge of how to help manage that through your diet and exercise. Have you been doing so? Mm. So knowledge can be powerful, right? It can be a powerful motivator. It can be a powerful influence, but knowledge in and itself, just like awareness in and of itself, does not necessarily lead to change. But again, you can't really change something without it. So it's an important part of that, the awareness, the knowledge. So we're building here, right? How about when we know better, we do better? This is a point where I pretty much challenge most groups. Look at I opened that water and didn't take a drink. Pretty much challenge most people when I'm in a weight loss class or group of people and say, how many of you have been through weight loss programs before? And it's almost everybody. And how many of you have seen a dietitian before in that program? And it's almost everybody. And how many of you have learned about the macros, the carbs and the protein and the sugar and the all the macronutrients, sugar, macronutrient, anyway, fat. That was it. Okay. So the macronutrients, how many of you have some awareness of that? And for the more programs you've been in, the more awareness you have. When we know better, we do better. Knowledge is power. How many of you have done better because you knew better? A lot of people don't, right? So when you hear people say, well, when you know better, you do better, take it with a grain of salt. When you know better, you can do better. Clearly, you can't do better if you don't know better. But when you know better, you can do better. But can do better and doing better are different things, right? So, do you want to be a can do better or a do better? I want to be a do better. All right. So, the last point, then we'll tie this all up together, is awareness does not automatically produce change in behavior, right? So, awareness doesn't automatically produce change, knowledge doesn't automatically produce change, knowing better doesn't always translate to doing better. So, raising awareness, gaining knowledge, learning what is better in the sense of leading you toward your goals is definitely part of the equation. Absolutely part of the equation, but it's not the entire answer. It's not going to, in and of itself, lead to real widespread changes in your attitude or your behaviors. So, what do we need, right? Well, let's look at four things that research has shown us can be helpful in bringing about change. So, one of the things is being intentional, meaning, okay, I've gained this awareness, I've gained this knowledge, I've gained this how to do better, and I'm going to intentionally, on purpose, put it into practice. So, I'm intentionally going to ask somebody to order the groceries from my list because they're not going to sneak in unhealthy things unless they're one of your enablers. I'm going to intentionally, when I find myself at the drive through or in front of the vending machine, say, whoa, 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 wait a minute, what am I doing here? Am I here because I don't want to feel an emotion? Do I need a healthier coping skill? So I'm going to be intentional about thinking through what I'm doing before I act on it, before I put my money in the machine, before I talk to the speaker at the drive through window. Being intentional, I'm going to think about what I'm doing and I'm going to intentionally make a choice. All right, so being intentional has to accompany this awareness. Sometimes you've got to think differently about something. For example, let's go back to setting those boundaries with children. We set boundaries with children because we want them to be safe. We want them to do their homework before they play. We want them to get enough sleep so that they can get up and go to school and do better the next day. What about with ourselves, right? Maybe we need to think differently about how we set boundaries with ourselves because this may be you, it may not be you, but I've known a person or two, maybe it's even included myself, to say, oh my gosh, what a stressful day. I need a blank food. I've had a stressful day. I deserve a blank food. Where is the logic in that? So maybe I need to change my thinking and put it to be more like a healthy adult who says, what does doing my job as an adult have to do with deserving an unhealthy food reward? Nothing. So maybe I have to change my thinking and step up the logic just a little bit because what I'm doing in that situation is just making an excuse for getting something that I want. So maybe I need to think differently about it. Maybe I need to think differently about, oh, I'm such a victim. Oh, how could they talk to me that way? How could they treat me that way? To think, you know what? The way they talk to me has nothing to do with me. The things they said may not have anything to do with me. Those words came out of their mouth. That tone came out of their mouth. That's about them. So I can wail and moan and have an excuse to overeat, or I can say, wait a minute, what do I want to do with that information? Do I want to punish myself with food? I think I'm making myself feel better. But eventually, like 5 minutes after I'm finished, I'm going to be punishing myself, beating up on myself mentally. So I'm not doing that to myself. So maybe you've got to change your thinking a little bit. A lot of times we need to apply logic because we're eating emotionally. We need some more logic. Maybe we need some new skills. When we talked about emotional eating, we talked about what we need our healthier coping skills. Maybe what you need to do is be intentional about learning some new healthy coping skills, which means maybe you go to the library and get a book on it. Maybe you order a book on Amazon. Maybe you get online and do a search engine search about healthy coping skills, right? So awareness is one piece, and then building the options and following through is a whole different one. And maybe you need to change the context, right? Like I'm thinking about this from a child's perspective, and I'm behaving like a child who's stomping my feet and wants what they want because I want it, and look at it from a healthy adult perspective. So, changing the context. These things can make a really big difference in moving from I know the information, which we can refer to as passive self awareness, to action. We want to take action. We want to behave like a healthy adult who's aware of the problems, but doesn't just sit and stew in the problems and think, poor me, poor me, poor me. This isn't fair. Why do I have to always watch what I eat? It's not fair. You're talking to a woman with 7 grandkids. And if I hear it's not fair one time on a weekend, I hear it 1,000 times, right? So I know that children say, it's not fair a lot. It might not be fair. It might not be fair that you have PCOS or that you have diabetes or that I have a disease of addiction or that I have no sight in one eye. None of those things are fair. But what's it got to do with choosing unhealthy food? Nothing in reality. It's just the context in which we place that. So we have to change from awareness, passive self awareness, to self directed, I've got to do it myself action. All right. So that's being a do doer. I'm not just trying, I'm not just thinking about it. I'm not just, yeah, I know what I need to do. I need to do what I need to do to get what I say I want. It's the only way it's going to happen. So, take home messages today. In order to improve your chances of maintaining this weight loss over time, right? You got to increase your self-awareness, not just through becoming aware or recognizing something that fits for you, but ask yourself some questions, right? Then you got to make the list of those options and make choices that will move you closer to your goals. So it's a process, but awareness absolutely is necessary, and awareness is the first step of change. Remember that awareness alone doesn't lead to change, but doing leads to change. Awareness is that first step, but action is required to see the results. So, the rest of the 4 ACEs we're going to talk about will work together with awareness to make it easier for you to make the changes that lead to lasting weight loss, improved quality of life, better health, the things that you said at the beginning of this journey that you wanted. So, I'd like to encourage you to listen to this podcast as many times as you need to, and to write down a list of things that maybe you're aware of now that you weren't aware of when you started this journey. Maybe invite your friends to give you some awarenesses about yourself. That takes some courage, my friends. And then make a list of options for you to do something, put forth action and effort to make a better choice and a more effective outcome, leading you to your goals. So encourage other people and listen to this in relation to other areas of your life, right? If you're having communication, what are you nasty tone of voice like I sometimes do? Do you not speak up for yourself? Do you need to become more assertive? Awareness in all areas of life. You can apply this to your job, you can apply it to your parenting, all sorts of things. But I do encourage you to apply it to your journey toward health. And remember the mantra, I choose health. Remember, we are talking about your health this day, every day. And so until next time, I encourage you to be a do-doer. All right, friends, thanks for joining me.